I'm not afraid to be a hypocrite to an extent, and I'm not seeking to be perfect, because you just can't get to the state of perfection, but we can all make progress. And I suppose I feel better. Yeah, I've made some lifestyle changes. They're not going to change the world by any means, but it makes me a bit more comfortable with starting to talk about this sort of stuff, I suppose.
This is Running for Real, the podcast for runners who know that for every runner's high, there are just as many lows. All those just missed PRs, easy runs that feel hard, injury blues, and more. Each week, we'll talk to running, health, and wellness experts about their highs, lows, and best advice to build our confidence. Running for Real is about being honest, being brave, and most of all, not feeling alone. And now here's our host, Tina Muir.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 224 of the Running For Real podcast. Thank you for joining me today. It is December. We are here, and I hope you are doing well. I mean, I know this has been a year of many ups and downs, and I just want to take a moment to say, if you are in one of those struggling moments, that's okay. I think there hasn't been anyone who has completely come out of this unscathed and just been happy and positive the whole year round. We've all struggled with ups and downs. We've all struggled with feeling despair and negative, and anyone who tells you that they haven't felt that is lying. Well, that's at least what I think. So I think all of us, even the most positive of people, have struggled a bit. So actually, on that note, why not reach out to a few people, especially if people have gone kind of quiet and usually they're quite loud and bubbly and you haven't heard from them or seen anything from them. Reach out, just check they're okay. I mean, we all need that now and again, and you'd like to think that your friends and family would check in about you if needed. So why not do it for some other people? It really would make their day. As someone who gets those messages occasionally, it's really nice to hear. Okay, so on to today's episode. We are into December, and I am, just finding it hard to believe 2020 is into its final month, but here we are. And actually, on the note of it being December, I do have a gift guide, or kind of more accurately, a giving guide for this month. I have over 50, maybe even over 60, I didn't actually count them, ideas for gifts for people, and a lot of them aren't necessarily gifts in the traditional sense. I really tried to be more of a sustainable, eco-friendly guide this year, which is why it's called a giving guide. There's also a lot of businesses that you could really go and support who aren't typical things that you might have thought of before. I really tried to stay away from big box stores. So, and actually my guest today, Damian Hall, it will actually help me with coming up with the ideas. So be sure you can go check that out. There will be a link in the show notes for that. Now, today I'm excited to introduce you to Damian Hall. If you have not heard of him, you're probably not British. He is a British ultra runner, has plenty of fastest known times, is a well-known runner, most recently breaking the 268-mile Pennine Way, which he ran in 61 hours and 34 minutes. He beat the previous record by more than 3 hours, or the record that had been long-standing by more than 3 hours. You're going to hear there's a little more that goes into it than that. But he's just a really nice guy, just someone fun to listen to today. But there's also a bit more of a serious message to what he wants to share today. And that's another reason I wanted to have him on. He is a coach. He has done a lot in the community, and I think you're really, really going to enjoy him. So without any further ado, we will take one moment to thank our sponsor, MetPro. Then we'll be right to the episode. Thank you to MetPro for sponsoring this episode of the Running For Real podcast. Now, you may remember me talking about MetPro in the past, or maybe you remember hearing my episode with Angelo Poli, who is the founder of MetPro. You may also remember that I had little ads with him a little while back where we'd answer your nutrition questions, and I thought that was a really great way. It wasn't necessarily about MetPro, but just a way to learn instead of hearing ads. And I really appreciate this company and what they're doing. Angelo Poli is this body transformation expert and founder of MetPro, which is a concierge nutrition, fitness, and lifestyle coaching company. Now, when I first learned about them, I was a bit skeptical, and I did not hide that fact. I told them that on the phone, but I soon learned that they're not wanting to guess what to do with metabolism. They're not trying to pull the wool over your eyes. These experts at MetPro are there to help you reach any of the goals or the struggles that you might be going through. They've helped thousands of individuals transform their bodies by hacking their metabolism through this concierge coaching. Over the years, MetPro has heard from people that they wish they could experience these benefits of their signature concierge coaching, but it's always been a little too high of a price for many of you to afford. And I know some of you have told me that as well. Now, the team at MetPro listened when they heard people saying that, and they've been working diligently to bring the MetPro algorithm to the palm of your hand. You know where I'm going with this. So today I'm excited to tell you that their newest edition, the MetPro Platform, is an app that allows you to experience the same science, same tailored strategy that experts use. And now, something particularly special about MetPro that is that you, as one of my audience members, have a chance to be one of the first to experience this new platform. And this isn't food logging or a workout app. It allows you to start tracking, analyzing, and learning what your metabolism responds to best. So then moving on in the future, you know how you respond to certain things and you learn to listen to your body. That's the thing I'm always saying is really important. And now MetPro is going to teach you how to do that. So if you sign up using the link metpro.co, that's metpro.co/Tina, you will get 14 days free. So head to metpro.co/Tina to take advantage of this special opportunity. Damian, thank you so much for joining me today on the Running For Real podcast. I am excited you are here, excited to talk to another person who thinks very similarly to me as in many topics, although not all of them. Not an ultra runner. I don't want to say I cannot do, but I do not intend right now to do the things that you do. But welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. Although there's still plenty of time to get you into longer stuff.
Mm-hmm. I actually was just talking to Des Linden about that. Came out a few weeks ago, and she was saying about how everyone's asking her about ultra marathons right now. And, she said, I think maybe I could do a 50 miler, but I don't think I could do 100. And I'm like, you just got to start. Once you start talking to these ultra runners, they somehow seem to suction you in to where you start considering ultras. And then all of a sudden you're like, I wonder if I could do 100 miles someday. So I was like, just stay away from the ultra runners or they're going to hook you in, because you all seem to have this magic ability to get people to wonder what they're capable of, which is really good, but maybe not so good when you think about your toenails and your just body shutting
do you
down.
really need toenails? One of our secrets is that I don't know. It is easier than it sounds. I know when you say, look, 100 miles isn't easy, but the whole thing is easier than it sounds. I promise. So often, there's a bunch of walking involved, although I try and call it power hiking to keep myself, ticking over. The aid stations are fantastic, especially in America, actually. Amazing aid stations. You could happily sit there for a long time stuffing your face. Usually you got loads of time. The scenery is fantastic. Am I winning you over here?
No, I'm already there. I think I know I'll do a 100 miler someday. It's just a matter of when. I know it will be in my lifetime. I just don't know when. But you've already started me off on a fun tangent here, but I actually have something serious that I think we need to address, because as we mentioned before we started recording, the majority of my audience is American, although I'm obviously very happy for any British people who are listening here, and they'll be happy to hear you. But on your website, it says that you've completed all these things, and we're going to go through some of them today. But it says consuming alarming amounts of tea and custard. So I have a few questions for that based on my American listeners. One, do you have tea and custard together?
No, I have. You've just put an idea in my mind.
Please.
No, I don't. No, I don't think that would go down well for me personally. No, but I do like tea a lot. Custard is consumed less often, but there's been one record or FKT in particular where custard became sort of the go-to fueling option.
Yeah,
kind of. Well, it does get like that. It does get, your body really calls out for sort of, it really needs cheese, or it's quite. I mean, I've never been pregnant, but my wife has twice, and I've seen some of the same. These bizarre cravings. I remember finding her with a jar of pickled onions once, and you definitely get those sorts of cravings in ultra marathons or just afterwards. which are great fun. But yeah, for a while there, custard. I did an 11-day FKT on the Southwest Coast Path here in Britain, and after a while, you do sort of go off a lot of food options that you might normally want, and often it's the kind of wet food, the rice puddings and the porridge. What do you call that? Oatmeal, don't you, over there? I think, but it's kind of sloppy stuff that doesn't require too much chewing. And custard became a really great option. So my crew was just handing me cups of custard, sometimes with miscellaneous lumps in, sometimes not. But that got me through.
Yeah. Well, you need to tell people what custard is, because custard here is like an ice cream that is so thick that you could shake it upside down and it doesn't fall out of the thing. So tell them what custard is.
Right, I didn't realise that wasn't as universal as I thought.
Yeah, you've been talking about custard, and people are like, "Huh, okay, interesting." American.
Well, I don't even strictly know what is custard. It's got egg in it, hasn't it? But it's kind of it is a dessert.
Is it tapioca?
It's what? Sorry,
tapioca.
I don't know. Is that an American thing? I think it's often we have it like with a cake, so it'll be like.
It's like vanilla pudding. I'll answer it for you. So yes. Americans, you have your pudding. But again, this is confusing because English people, pudding is dessert. But it's like American pudding, vanilla, but not like a nasty... see, it's still packaged, but it's just much better than pudding. I always have a tin because you get it in powder. Cornstarch, that's what it's made of. Cornstarch or corn flour. Right. No, what's it called in England? Corn flour.
I mean, I'm out of depth here. We've gone in too deep. I just grabbed the
to go off topic, but yes, it's something you put on apple crumble, or people put it with like if they're going to have a pie, or people eat. I used to eat with bananas and peaches. That was a dessert when I was younger. So yes, I wanted to go over that, but I've made this way too complicated. And then so from there, the other second little thing. For Americans who hear this tea thing with English people, I always have a hard time trying to explain to people that it is literally, my parents probably consume 8 to 12 cups of tea a day. They very rarely drink water. Damian's drinking one right now. Explain this like obsession and how far it actually is involved in your day.
Yeah, I guess I didn't realise growing up in Britain, it's not only in Britain where we drink tea, but I didn't realise how much of a British thing it is, I suppose. I guess people do drink coffee over here, but maybe not as much as America. And I don't really like coffee. So I would have probably 3 cups of tea by the time I finish breakfast.
That and I probably have.
It does have some caffeine in, but not as much as coffee, I believe. And I probably have, I suppose 6 on an average day, 6 cups of tea probably. And it's just a wonderful drink, but it is hot. It's not meant to be iced, is what I would tell many of your listeners over there. And for those of you who know John Kelly, who's an ultra runner, an American ultra runner from Tennessee, who's over here at the moment, who we might go into in a bit. He was trying to tell me that tea is something that is cold and iced, and he shared some of that with me, and it made me feel quite sick.
Yeah, but you don't put milk in it if it's American iced tea. Well,
yeah, no, that would make me even more sick. Or even, you could add custard to that. I don't know. But yes, it's not to be confused with iced tea, which is a very different thing, but possibly from the same genesis.
Yes.
But yes, tea drinking, maybe just because it's a bit more cooler and more damp and looking out the window and it's classic grey sky. Maybe it's partly that, but I drink a lot of tea and a lot of people I know do as well. You should try it, everyone. It's great.
I'm not sure this is a good conversation for me. I might start crying because I miss home. I don't know when I'm going to get.
You drink as much tea over there? Can you get?
I don't drink tea at all. Actually, I'm an embarrassment to my country. I might have a tea like once a month. But I make it a chai tea. So a chai tea bag. So not even the real one. But no, I've never liked it. My family do, but I don't.
Oh, I mean, I didn't know this when you invited me on the podcast. I suppose we've started, so I should follow through with it, but I might not have accepted your kind invitation.
I know.
Oh.
I've been banished. That's actually why I'm here. I got kicked out.
And rightly so.
Yeah, I know. It is embarrassment. I always, when people who've been in England have me over, or I go to their house or something, they're like, "Oh, you like tea, don't you?" And I'm like, "Actually, no, I don't." Or sometimes people buy me tea bags that they found, and I'm like, "Thank you." Not really a tea person, but but yeah, I'm not really a hot drinks person in general. So that's my kind of argument. Okay. All right. Let's move on to running. So you are a well-known ultra and fell runner in England. We have to start with Americans who get confused by this term fell running. People say to me all the time, is it just you pick a point in the distance and run there? So explain that.
Well, I mean, it's nice of you to call me a fell runner. I suppose in England, I don't really consider myself one because it's quite regional, as in it's mostly something people do in the north, and I'm from the south. But I have done a few fell races and done some fell running rounds. I don't know how many of your listeners would have heard of the Bob Graham Round, which Kilian Jornet came over and set a record on a couple of years ago, and that's probably the biggest kind of the Super Bowl of fell running. But usually fell running means, yes, fell tends to mean mountain, but our mountains are generally a lot smaller than what you have over there. But they can often be kind of quite, I suppose if they're small, they're quite rugged. And usually, often a fell race would be to the top of a mountain and back without any trails often. So it's often over rocks, long grass, tussocks, as we call it, bits of bog. So it's quite rough terrain, which makes it pretty exciting. And it can be as short as almost 3 miles, like to the top and back down. There are some longer ones and some longer challenges. But yeah, it's quite old. It's been going on for hundreds of years in Scotland as well, and definitely in Scotland for a long time. And yeah, there's a big tradition of it in the north, but it's very strict about what you can call a fell race. It has to have a certain amount of elevation per mile, and that's why in the south we'll put on maybe a trail race or what we might call a multi-terrain race, but we can't sort of technically call it a fell race.
Oh, I didn't know that. Interesting.
Yeah, it's quite particular. But yeah, it's a wonderful sport. Very kind of low, very uncommercial. A lot of the races cost, a handful of, £6. That'd be what would that be? Kind of $10 or less.
$10, yeah, somewhere around there.
And you just sort of turn up on the day, hand your cash over, and people run in sort of vests and bum bags, and up they go and back again, and everyone has a bit of cake and a pint, and that's about it. So it's it's a wonderful tradition we have here.
Yeah, no, I thank you for educating some of that. I didn't even know some of that. I didn't know about the low cost either. I didn't realize it was that. But I actually was talking to Ian Sharman. Do you know him?
Yes, he used to coach me, actually. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was talking to him the other day about on the Podium Runner podcast about the difference between English and American running, and I was saying I really miss cross country, and it's hard to explain the low key, low maintenance-ness of cross country in England. How you just turn up. Like I have such fond memories of turning up, absolutely freezing to death, but with not enough clothes, just like taking my tracksuit off and then going and running around with like 70-year-old women next to me and like 15-year-old girls. And then you're all just out there together and you got mud splattered in your face. And I just reflect. I think there's so much more of just a simpleness about running in England. And obviously the London Marathon is this big event and big organized, well orchestrated thing, but I think a lot of the rest of running in England is a lot more just back to basics than it is over here. And I definitely encourage people to check something out if you ever get the opportunity to go to England, see if you can jump in a race, because it is quite fun to be able to do stuff like that. And I miss it. So especially the muddy cross country courses. So yeah, I'm jealous you get to do that daily. Okay, so I want to start with, we've kind of been talking about it already, but the thing for many people listening who we talked to earlier about running 100 miles, 50 miles, ultra runs, is that people think, and myself included, my marathon PR is 2:36. So if I think about running a marathon on the trails or on if I think about doing a 50K, that's going to take me more than double what I've done before. So that sounds like a massive amount of time to be out there. And I think that's the thing with a lot of people, that they think this is going to be so hard on my body, it's going to be exhausting, but they're thinking of it in terms of road, beat up your body, marathon type running, and then doubling that feeling. So tell us about the difference if you are out on trails or if you are doing it slower.
Well, I think that's one of the key words. It is all slower. Like there's definitely less kind of clock watching, less looking at your face glued to your watch, because that pacing that's so crucial to a road marathon, it just isn't there. Okay, people who are trying to win the race, they might know roughly what time they need to do, but for most people in the race, they're just a lot more relaxed to start with, and just usually covering that distance is an achievement in itself. Mm-hmm. No one in your office knows what a good time is for a 50 miler. They'll just be like, wow, 50 miles. So it doesn't matter if you ran that in, 7 hours or 17 hours. And usually the cutoffs are very generous, and allow you lots of time. But also, as you mentioned with the terrain, usually these are in sort of, on trails, with some lumps involved. And you might think, those lumps are going to make it more awkward, but often, different parts of your body are getting used in different ways, rather than when you're on tarmac and it's flat, you're getting, your knees, hips and ankles are getting exactly the same impact, pounding, repetition all the time. When you go up and down a trail or weave in and out a bit between some trees, for example, you're getting, your body's just getting, parts of it are getting rest, parts of it are getting stressed differently. If you've never run on trails, then that, will be, a little bit of a surprise to your body, but obviously you've probably trained a little bit on trails. But I would go so far as to say that probably up to 50 miles, compared to a road marathon, 50 miles on trails, I would say that's not going to be any more painful in most cases. Obviously, if you go to 100 miles, that's simply that time on feet, does get a bit more uncomfortable. You do need a bit more mental motivation. But by all means, you can have sort of, trail marathons and upwards, 50K, up to 50 miles. You can have a really pleasant, enjoyable, rewarding time. And often the scenery, of course, is superior. So you get into that sort of, you can almost forget what you're doing a bit and just enjoy the views and the camaraderie as well. People are just more social. I found my very first sort of take home from my first ultra was it felt like we were all a team, all in it together. I'm not saying road marathon isn't social, and there are lots of good things about road running. Like for example, on the trails, you don't get the crowds like you might in a city marathon. But sometimes you don't want a crowd watching you when you're not feeling so good. But hopefully I've given you enough good reasons to be at least curious. To try it out. I tried it once and loved it. Yeah,
and I think that's probably the case with a lot of people. From what I hear of people who give it a try and go over there, and it's also the fear that many road athletes have of rolling their ankle or falling and hurting themselves. You're going to get better at navigating trails and where to put your feet, but also you're strengthening those areas like your ankles that will then make it less likely to happen. Is that right? So it's giving you more of like an all body workout rather than it just being using those same muscles over and over again.
Yes, and it often strengthens your kind of lateral muscles because you're not just going in sort of a straight line in exactly the same way. You are, weaving in and out a bit perhaps, or occasionally like a little jump somewhere, and that's going to strengthen you overall. Now, obviously, it is smart to practice on trails a bit, and you could do extra things like strength work, but for a lot of people, it's not necessarily needed. But also like, and you can hike bits. There's no problem. That's not even frowned upon. It's encouraged. You'll get to a hill and you'll see everyone will start walking, and you'll probably almost think, why is everyone walking? And that just can preserve muscles for later on. It can often just feel like a fun day out for a lot of it anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, really cool. Thank you. I'm just going to ask you, can you hold your microphone out or tuck your collar in, just because it's rubbing on the outside of your collar, whatever that is, hoodie or...
I didn't even realise this was a microphone, actually.
Yeah, that is
that. Oh, I didn't realise it was.
Yeah.
Okay, so that should
okay. Yeah, that's
should be
fine.
Better,
yeah, Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Right. So now I want to ask you about a recent FKT, fastest known time, that you did called the Pennine Way. You got a lot of publicity in the UK for it, and well deserved. So tell us, for listeners who have no clue what that means, tell us what that involved.
Well, I don't know how well known the Appalachian Trail over there is, but the Pennine Way over here was inspired by the Appalachian Trail. It's just over 50 years old, but it's quite a nice story because about 80 years ago, two American women sent a letter to a newspaper here asking, they were coming to Britain for a walking holiday, and they asked if there was like a long green trail like the Appalachian Way. And a journalist who saw that thought, oh, that's so disappointing. We haven't got one. Let's make one. There were some other political reasons as well. Don't want to go into it too far, but there was a thing called the mass trespass in 1932, and a lot of land at the time was private and owned by I guess ultimately sort of, the rich elite who were using it just for hunting, and sort of common folk, for want of a better phrase, couldn't really access it. So there was a great feeling of that's not fair. That's not fair that most people are kept off this land. So the two things tied in together, and this one guy, Tom Stevenson, sort of pioneered. I mean, the laws end up changing, and he pioneered this idea of having a Pennine Way, which starts roughly in the middle of England, in the Peak District, and goes right up the middle of the country to the border with Scotland. It's 260 miles. Now, they're not really mountains. It's more kind of hills and moors, bogs. But in 1989, a fell runner called Mike Hartley set a record on it. There had been some records before, but he set this record in 89 that was to run it in 2 days and 17 hours. And he did that without even sleeping. And that had stood for 31 years, which intimidated me a lot. And I'd hiked the Pennine Way and had set some other, less impressive FKTs, and that was always on my mind. And then two things happened this year. One is the obvious kind of lockdown and races being cancelled, which sort of made this almost unavoidable for me. I had no excuses left. But then also my American friend, John Kelly, who I don't know how well people know him, but he's the last person to finish the Barkley Marathons over there, which is generally seen as the toughest running race in the world. No one's finished it for 2 years, and 3 years ago he finished it. He was the only finisher. He moved to Somerset here, quite near me, and we became friends. And he had already told me he was going to have a go, and that also helped give me a nudge. And we discussed it a bit, and I said, well, if you don't mind too much, I'm going to have a go as well at some point this year.
Why could you not do it together? If ultra running is and I'm curious in general, because you say about the camaraderie and we see it, but then we don't really see people doing things like that together.
That's a great question. We did both consider that. He suggested it. I then suggested maybe starting at opposite ends at the same time, which I think might have been pretty exciting for people to watch anyway. But if I'm totally honest, a few things happened. It was difficult to get dates that would fit exactly. And I wanted two of my good friends to crew me, and one of them couldn't do one particular week, which was the week John ended up going. And it was like, do I sacrifice kind of some of my team and what makes me feel comfortable for doing it at the same time as John when I might not be as successful? And I guess ultimately I decided I wanted to do my best possible run. So I went with the more selfish thing, I suppose. But also if we ran at the same time, I think, it would have been a lovely sort of spectacle or gesture or showcase. But if I'm honest, ultimately, I wanted to set the best time I could. And I thought actually running with someone else probably isn't as smart, because you might run at their pace rather than yours.
You don't get to.
You end up with some compromises. I just did a little test. You see, I'm quite a morning person and he isn't. So I would have started at 5 or 6 in the morning, and he didn't want to start till 10 or 11. Now that's not a disaster, and maybe we could have met at the middle, but that already just shows you end up compromising and compromising. And ultimately, I suppose I went for the more sort of competitive idea. But But what happened in the end, because of lockdown, for quite a long time, we couldn't, the whole country was locked down. And then Wales and Scotland had slightly different lockdown rules. So there was a long time where we couldn't do it. And then we were sort of released back onto the hills. And he ended up doing it just 8 days before me. And he broke the record that had stood for 31 years by, I think it was 34 minutes. So overall, I know in road running times that sounds like forever, but I suppose in our world that isn't much time at all, we don't think. And yeah, it was quite, obviously I was following him avidly, and actually he made me think that was kind of the best result for me, actually, because obviously if he had smashed the record by hours and hours, I would have been really like, oh. And if he had not broken the record, it would have stayed as well. It would have been even more daunting to me. Like, even John Kelly can't break the record. What help have I? But it worked out. He did have a lot of tummy problems. He had some issues. But I think, his run was the best result for me, if I'm honest.
So do you think you still would have broken, which you did break his record by 3 hours, right, in the end?
Yeah.
So do you think you still would have run that fast had he not gone first?
I think I did stick to, good question. I did stick to my same tactics that I was going to, that I was happy with. I didn't really change anything that I could think of watching John's. Now, he was a lot more aggressive than me in terms of starting out harder, having a schedule that put him like 4 hours up on the previous record. And that was never going to suit. In fact, our good friends, Summit Fever Media, have just putting together a film. They filmed both of us, and that is coming out in a couple of weeks. And I think it will show how we're quite different personalities. And he's definitely more confident than I am, and he was happy to, really, I suppose, really go for it. Whereas my attitude was always, more relaxed. My schedule was only going to get me in there just ahead of his record. But I did aim to, because I wanted to be more relaxed overall. And I thought, if I'm happier, more relaxed, I'll just enjoy it more and good things will happen from that. At the same time, I wanted to build a bit of a buffer, but I didn't want the pressure of building a buffer. So, he had sort of added that pressure to his schedule, if you know what I mean, of trying to be 4 hours up straight away. I built it gradually. I'm not saying my approach is better, but it suits my personality better. And ultimately that just about worked out. I mean, I built a 3 hour buffer over the first 24 hours, and then I couldn't, and then I would start to have problems. I needed some power naps and so on. And I just about held on to it. But different approaches really, I'd say.
Thank you to Inside Tracker for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. I have been a fan of Inside Tracker for many years. I think I was pretty early into my elite running career when I first reached out to them and said, I need to get some blood work done. Help me figure this out. And they did. And I went to get my first set of blood work. I am not a fan of blood work, by the way. I do not like needles at all. But I overcame my fear, and I've done it a few times a year since with them, even though I didn't have to technically. I knew how important it was. So yes, I risked the passing out on the table. And yes, honestly, there have been a few times where I've gone to have this blood work done and they've done it. And then they've said, are you okay? And I'm like, I need to lie down because the blood is rushing to my ears. The room is spinning. I'm sweating and I'm about to pass out. And I've had that so many times, which is really embarrassing. But, as I said, it's worth it at the end of the day. And I really, really love what Inside Tracker gives me. It gives you the kind of full analysis of your body. I don't really know how to describe it, but you get a list of all the biomarkers that you could need, like vitamin D and your iron, your ferritin, your iron broken down into different categories. You can get all the different areas looked at so you can find out what is going on with your body. And I used it when I was an elite runner, trying to figure out what was going on with my system when I wasn't getting my period correctly. And Inside Tracker was one of the ways that helped me figure out what was going on. So I knew what I needed to do to get my period back. So I'm really thankful for them for that. But it also shows you how you are changing throughout the years. So every time I go, it adds to my graph so I can see how each of my numbers are changing and see which things I need to work on over the coming months. And that's really helpful. And then it also gives you suggestions as to what you can eat, how you can change your diet, videos you can watch to learn more about each of them so that you can then grow and just try and get yourself closer and closer to optimal in each of your areas. I'm really a big fan of Inside Tracker, and I am excited that I can tell you that you could take advantage of their best deal of the year, take control of your health and your wellness with $200 off the Ultimate Plan, which is their most comprehensive package. You can use code GIFTFROMRUNFORREAL. That's gift from run for real with the word for. Gift from run for real at insidetracker.com to go take advantage of that offer.
My schedule was only going to get me in there just ahead of his record. But I did aim to, because I wanted to be more relaxed overall. And I thought if I'm happier, more relaxed, I'll just enjoy it more and good things will happen from that. At the same time, I wanted to build a bit of a buffer, but I didn't want the pressure of building a buffer. So he had sort of added that pressure to his schedule, if you know what I mean, of trying to be 4 hours up straight away. I built it gradually. I'm not saying my approach is better, but it suits my personality better. And ultimately that just about worked out. I mean, I built a 3-hour buffer over the first 24 hours, and then I couldn't, and then I would start to have problems. I needed some power naps and so on. And I just about held on to it. But different approaches really, I'd say.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And that is something that I don't think we've covered before about, different personalities and how some people, I mean, you hear about how in marathons, you don't want to be banking time because it very rarely works out. But then, in ultra running, it's a fine line of you want to get ahead of it while you feel good. But then, you're going to go through ups and downs, and you're going to go through moments where you might lose a ton of time, but then an hour later you might feel really good and make up some time. So, it's interesting to hear you say that. And is there that same intimidation factor with names like John Kelly or just anyone out there who has made a name for themselves? Do you find yourself feeling intimidated by people's records, or is it a case of you don't really need to go there because you never know whether, like, everyone is going to have struggles. You never know how people are going to fare. So it removes that kind of, well, this person's consistent. They always run well. Like Courtney Darwater comes to mind over here. Like, she's very, very good. But then I think it was Western States, one of the races last year, she pulled out at 80 miles, way ahead. So like even she is not invincible, How does that intimidation factor come in with big names?
Yeah, that's a great question, because to be honest, I was pretty intimidated by John, although I considered him a friend. He was also kind of a hero. Still is. Don't get me wrong. And I must admit, I did speak to a sports psychologist, not because I was so kind of concerned by that, but it was just an area of the sport I'd never really explored properly before, and I had the opportunity, especially during lockdown. We all had a bit more time and so on. And I actually thought, I've never really looked into sports psychology. I've read books, podcasts, etc. But I thought it'd be fascinating to chat to a sports psychologist. So I spoke to Dr. Josie Perry and had 3 sessions with her. And one of my things was, and there was another guy as well, again, a friend of mine who's a record-breaking fell runner who had told me he might have a go as well. So I had these 2 guys. Well, I had the record holder, Mike Hartley, from 1989. I had these 2 other guys who I really looked up to, possibly going for the record as well. And I just felt, I suppose, quite insignificant compared to them. And I was intimidated. And I suppose she just said the obvious stuff of, well, have you ever, what's your background? Can you compare yourself to these guys at all? And, it just so happens they've both done races that I've done, and I have done better than them once or twice. Not every time or anything, but there are certain races where I've done better. And obviously that gives you a bit of confidence. And then, like you say, especially in ultra running, just so much can go wrong because there are so many aspects. And unfortunately for John, he did have real, severe sort of tummy problems. He says even before he started out that morning, something was off with his tummy. We're still not quite sure what. So by the end, he was just getting in, no calories. So he was really, in many ways, his run is much more guts. No, I was going to say more gutsy. That's probably not the right word. More heroic or whatever word you want to use. Because he really battled through some real difficulties. Mine wasn't easy, but most things went quite smoothly, or as smoothly as could be expected. But yeah, and of course, the psychologist said the obvious thing of, you can't control what they're going to do, so you've got to not think of that and try and control everything you can do. And that did help. And I just concentrated on preparing as thoroughly as I could, and I prepared more thoroughly than for anything else I've ever done, I think. And it turned out all right. He didn't have the greatest time, and mine went better for whatever reasons. So it did work out. So it just shows, I suppose, there are just so many different aspects to the sport. That's partly why I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really cool. Thank you. And I will put a link in the show notes for anyone to go watch. Well, by the time this comes out, that video you mentioned will be out, or I assume it will be out. And then there's also another video of you talking about the race, which is really cool to go watch. I will put a link so people can go watch that, because it was quite enjoyable to watch and see the journey unfold and the ups and downs and things like that. Now, one thing I want to focus on from this Pennine Way challenge, if you want to call it that, is that you did it carbon negative, or you consider yourself a carbon negative runner. What does that mean?
Well, yeah, the first thing to say is, of course, my little adventure did encourage more car journeys than would have happened otherwise. I had a van following me with my crew, and quite a lot of pacers came out and met me, and they would have nearly always driven, done a car journey that might not have happened. So I fully put my hand up there. But what I guess the longer version is, I suppose last year or maybe the year before, I started to, I guess, get what people call, I think they call it climate anxiety, about our sort of climate and ecological emergency, because it really seems like we've only got around 8 to 10 years to significantly turn things around, and that's really frightening. And I've got 2 young children, and I suppose what haunts me is the idea that generations after us will look back at us and go, they did nothing. They knew this was coming, and they did nothing. And that's terrifying for me. If my children or grandchildren, more likely grandchildren, I suppose, well, both, think, thanks you lot. You did nothing for us. You knew this was happening. And the science is quite clear, absolutely clear. And it's happening now. We can see it in our weather, over there and over here, even in Britain. We have fairly mild, climate, but weird things are happening all the time. Driest April, hottest May, wettest February, all the time. So it's quite clear that it's quite clear things are happening, and we've got so little time. And it's not like we can reverse it once it all happens. Once all this ice is melted, for example, it's going to affect the seas and temperatures all over the place. It's not like we can go, oh whoops, let's put it back in the box. It's already out there, and there'll be other tipping points. And this is all, this isn't some conspiracy theory. This is all, proper scientists are saying this. It's reported by the BBC. You can find out all this information. So I felt really, I suppose, stressed and upset about it, and it felt like our politicians weren't taking it seriously, and I suppose corporations too. Although I feel like that has changed in the last 6 months or so, to an extent, but not enough. And I kind of thought, well, I think there are 2 ways of looking at it, and I don't want to be too preachy or too. I'm not trying to tell other people what they should do, but I think there are 2 ways of looking at it. One is the kind of personal stuff, and then one's the political stuff. Because there's an argument to say, if I stop flying, what does it really matter? Because there's a massive, I don't know, there's Shell down the road plundering the earth, and so it's going to make no difference. I suppose, so for me, the biggest difference we can make is the political stuff. And that, to me, that means, I suppose, voting in certain ways. So I was very, very pleased with what happened over there recently, as I know a lot of people were. But it might, in Britain, it could be, I suppose, pestering your local MP with these issues. And it is just such a big thing. There's the whole transport thing. There's the energy thing. There's the diet stuff. It's a huge subject, and no one could be sort of an expert on all of it. But yeah, I think number one is the political stuff. I've got a bit involved with an organization over here called Extinction Rebellion, who have been doing civil disobedience protests, but they also do sort of campaigning against kind of, new airports or new runways and things like that. And then the other stuff is the personal stuff. And I guess I hesitated at first to do that sort of thing because I was worried about being called a hypocrite. Because I was flying, maybe not around the world, but I was flying a fair bit to races. There are lots of exciting races in Europe. I did fly to America last year for the first time. And I kind of thought, well, how can I, speak up if I'm doing stuff? But I think what made me okay with that was, we're all in this system so heavily reliant on fossil fuels that we it's so difficult to escape it. Like, even when we use data on our phones, that's connected to fossil fuel use. And obviously all our food is, all our clothing, it's all had all caused greenhouse gas emissions. And a lot of that isn't, it's not directly our fault. But I think a lot of us are becoming aware of this stuff and being able to take small actions on it, which could add up to big things, of course. And even just spreading awareness is and even just talking about it, I think it keeps things on the agenda and probably does help. So yeah, I'm getting a bit waffly. But it's just such a vast subject. And I think one thing, I'm not afraid to be a hypocrite to an extent, and I'm not seeking to be perfect because you just can't get to the state of perfection, but we can all make progress. Mm-hmm. And I suppose I feel better. Yeah, I've made some lifestyle changes. They're not going to change the world by any means, but it makes me a bit more comfortable with starting to talk about this sort of stuff, I suppose. But I know it's a huge subject.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I've been covering this a lot in recent years. And you said there about you feel brands have been, or corporations brands have been more aware in the last 6 months or so. And I had Darren O'Lean on the show a few months ago who did that Down to Earth with Zac Efron, and it was kind of a sustainability program on Netflix. And he was saying the same thing, that behind the scenes, he's working with a lot of the big, massive corporations on making changes on what they can do. So he was feeling positive about that. But tell us about your experience. I mean, you do work with a brand that makes bars whose packages are compostable. But tell us what else you've seen. Do you feel like things are changing in terms of making that switch or making that progression to being an environmentally friendly, sustainable person in general easier?
Yeah, I'm seeing, if we just look at the kind of the running world, I'm seeing lots of encouraging, exciting signs. I feel actually really inspired. Just for example, again, it is a friend of mine, but he has a company called Trees Not Teas.
Yes.
And have you heard of those?
Yeah, they reached out to me recently.
Oh, great. Oh, good. Well, he's only been going for less than a year, I think, and they've just got it's totally caught people's imagination. So it totally proves people are ready for it. And it's a simple idea. It's when you sign up for a race, instead of signing up and getting yet another T-shirt, which often if they have, sort of polyester and plastics in the T-shirt, which most of our race T-shirts do, mm-hmm. they're going to take centuries to biodegrade. And often, how many race T-shirts do we need? Mm-hmm. I don't need any more, for example. And instead of getting a T-shirt, you can just get a tree planted for the same cost. And he's planting all these trees, and he sets it all up for race organisers. At the moment, he's just in Britain, I think, but there's a good chance it'll expand globally, I think. But that's lessening some waste and just getting more trees planted. Now, I guess that's small in the grand scheme of things, but it's a step in the right direction. It's really taken off quickly, which shows that people want this and people know it's right. Another friend of mine who's a GB ultra runner, he's with his wife has started up a company. Well, I forget if they're a charity or a company, but they're called Rerun Clothing, and basically you send them your running clothing that you don't want anymore, and they're either selling it, if it's a good condition, they're selling it really, really cheaply, and all the money goes to either further helping with the just helping, they don't make, it's not for profit basically, or they're sending clothes on to sort of refugees and so on. Mm. And they almost like don't want to exist because, and this year's obviously been terrible because so many races got all the race t-shirts printed.
Yeah.
And then there was no race.
Hi friends, ready to hear about our Black-owned business of the week? I am excited to introduce you to True Laundry, and I want to thank Daryl Murphy for telling me about True Laundry. It was a business founded by three men, Ali B. Mohammed, Malik Salim, and Abdur Rahim Shahid. They have created these laundry products, which is laundry detergent, fabric softener, hand sanitizer, and their biggest focus is just about quality. They make it more concentrated so that you use less liquid, which is obviously going to only help in the long run. They consider themselves the most effective laundry detergent on the market. It's 4 times more concentrated, so you can use less soap. And it is just powerful, economical. It is going to be low suds, which people actually tend to be a bit skeptical about low suds, but they believe that the amount of suds does not equal the amount of cleaning power. It works with high efficiency washing machines, and it's just a great way to support another Black-owned business. And I just wanted to highlight them. So you can find them at thetrueproducts.com. That's thetrueproducts.com. And you can tell them that you heard this from me if you like. Or you can just reach out and see how you could support them. This is another Black-owned business that I wanted to highlight. And go check out thetrueproducts.com to see True Laundry, laundry detergent, fabric softener, and hand sanitizer.
Another friend of mine who's a GB ultra runner, he's with his wife has started up a company. Well, I forget if they're a charity or a company, but they're called Rerun Clothing. And basically you send them your running clothing that you don't want anymore. And they're either selling it, if it's a good condition, they're selling it, really, really cheaply. And all the money goes to either further, helping with the, well, just helping, they don't make, it's not for profit basically. Or they're sending clothes on to sort of refugees and so on. And they almost like don't want to exist because, and this year's obviously been terrible because so many races got all the race t-shirts printed. Yeah. And then there was no race. But if there are any race organizers listening, actually, one really simple thing you can do with t-shirts is not put the year on it because, that makes it only specific for that year. And then it's no good to you afterwards. Whereas if you don't put the year on it, and Centurion Running do this over here, who are popular race organizers, then it could be used any time. So in a way, they're small things, but in a way, they're big things too. And then in brands, I'm impressed with some stuff I see. I can't help, but mention my sponsors, Innovate, who are a British company. They're working really hard behind the scenes. I can't sort of give away too much, but they do genuinely care. I know the individuals there. They feel bad, if shoes fall apart a bit too soon, which has happened in the past. They feel awful about it and they want to make the most durable possible products, and they've got this product called graphene, which goes into the grip, which just makes it last much, much longer, for example. But they're trying to do a lot more, cutting down on packaging's a really fascinating one. We were speaking before we were recording, actually, weren't we, about packaging, and when kit arrives and it's in lots of plastic. But I was having a chat with them the other week, and it is so complicated. There's just no good alternative yet. If you wrapped that stuff, so they feel like your clothing, if it's not in some sort of protective cover, when it gets shipped over from China, which a lot of our clothing does, it's going to get damaged. There's going to be more stuff thrown away, which ultimately is more waste. But I was saying, surely there's some paper option, but paper's going to make everything heavier, which probably makes the boat, it's going to burn more fuel. That's probably going to be worse for the environment than a bit of plastic. So it is more complex than I realized. But what was really encouraging was they're really working hard to improve. They've started the company that kind of audited me to see if I was, to make me carbon negative was a company called Our Carbon, who are kind of carbon accountants. And they'll do that for any organization or individual. And they can audit a company. And that's what I'd love to see in the future is, even on our clothing and our shoes and so on, running or non-running, it'd be amazing to see, and maybe this is a bit of a pipe dream, but I kind of think it will happen, a carbon, what did this cost in carbon credits?
I've actually
would be
heard
great
that.
to see.
Have you read the book Uninhabitable Earth by David Wallace Wells?
Oh, I haven't yet, actually. No, is it good?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty terrifying. It definitely gets you into that anxiety you said, but I feel like I've pulled out the other side of that now. But that book, he said, well, he didn't say about it in the book, but he did say about it on a podcast. I heard him saying that he thinks that will be kind of essentially the nutrition information of the future, with every product is going to have, this is what the carbon cost is of this product. So he said that he predicted that was probably 2 or 3 years ago. I heard him say that. So I would imagine by then, I mean, he's a New York Times best-selling author. So I would imagine that's probably gained some momentum somewhere by now. So yeah, I think that pipe dream of yours may well come true. So that's very interesting to hear you say that.
Yeah, I mean, this company I just mentioned, Our Carbon, that's exactly what they're doing for companies. And in fact, I mentioned this film being made about myself and John Kelly by Summit Fever Media. They're putting it into a film festival next week, but that film festival is already pushing back on filmmakers and saying, yeah, but what are you doing to make your practice sustainable? So that they've made that film carbon negative. For the time being, though, although it's satisfying to put that label on it, as I have myself for the year, usually it does involve offsetting, which means, paying someone to plant some trees for you. But at the moment, and that's got its critics and so on, but I don't know what the alternative is for now, and it doesn't mean, you pay someone and then you can just carry on flying as much as you like or whatever. But I think if you make lifestyle changes alongside that sort of stuff, well, don't want to tell other people how to do things, but I guess that's what I'm trying to do to feed my own conscience, I suppose. But yeah, ultimately I see lots of encouraging signs. But as consumers, one thing we can really do is simply, I suppose, consume less, because, we're all buying more things than myself included, than we need. And runners are maybe some of the worst in terms of, the new shoe has come out, the new watch has come out. Oh, the new one, it's got to be better than the one I've got. I'll buy the new one. And it is, I'm guilty of it or have been. But that's maybe a mindset we need to start adopting, and then maybe companies will listen a bit more as well if new stuff isn't. I mean, yeah, it's tricky because they've got to make profit and so on. Yeah. But yeah, we maybe as consumers we should start to think: do I need the new thing? The thing I've got at the moment works just fine. Yeah, but it's a tricky one.
Let's use that to give this some action items for this episode. So Christmas is a few weeks away. That's weird to say. And for people, let's take turns in giving people some ideas of either alternative gifts you could give to people instead of buying yet another new item, or if you are going to suggest an item, some things to look for within that. So, for example, I can start off by saying, if you want to get, let's say you have, I can use this as my example. I have a, what will he be, 2 or 3 month old nephew, who I would like to get something. He's the second child. So I'm going to say, I'm going to get him something personalized. So I would get him maybe a wooden puzzle that is made of his name, but buy it from a local small business rather than buying a Fisher-Price puzzle that's made of plastic. That is a personalized item, so it's special. It is wooden, and you are supporting a local business. So that's one. All right, give me one of your suggestions.
Well, that was brilliant, and that was kind of what I was going to say.
Really? Sorry.
Yeah, I've got two. No, it's good. I've got 2 children, and what you notice at Christmas and birthdays, so many plastic bits of rubbish, really, that just break anyway and just get chucked in the corner, chucked in a cupboard. We never use it. So yeah, I love the idea of something sustainable, something wooden, something personalized, and local. That's all wonderful. I guess our family have gone away a bit from, and I don't want to sound too irritating, but I suppose we've gone away a bit from buying presents as well. We get presents for the kids, but we don't get presents for most of the adults, or we get one present. We all agree on a price, maybe £20. We buy one present, and then we sort of play a card game, and everyone ends up with one sort of randomized present, which is usually quite fun. And we just, because we all sort of agreed we didn't really need anything. I guess for some people that sounds a bit like you're killing Christmas and taking the fun out of it. But for me, it really it meant the sitting down and feasting and just hanging out with family became the big thing that we did, and really enjoyed. Yeah, really enjoyed that. I guess another idea is and also me and my sort of sisters who both have children, we're all open about just giving each other giving each other's children secondhand presents, and they don't care at all. So they get, I suppose, maybe one of those toys that's not, that's been disregarded or grown out of. And we're almost just sharing presents around, and they're thrilled that, as long as you get to unwrap something,
that's so true.
They're perfectly happy with that. So just almost doing secondhand presents. I think just be open about it though in advance. Otherwise some people can be a bit sort of, oh, I think this is secondhand. But I think it's removing the stigma of it almost. So hopefully that's a couple of ideas which don't actually involve buying. So
no, I appreciate that. Thank you. That's good. All right, let's see if we can do a few more. So along those lines, races aren't really on right now, but you could, if you know that there's a local race that someone wants to do and maybe isn't going to be so big that it's got a likelihood of being cancelled, you could always pay for a race entry for someone if they're a runner. And I'll give one more, being you mentioned about experiences. What about, one thing I like to do is taking my mum out for an afternoon tea, or you could pay for a massage for someone who, really likes to relax or doesn't get treated very much, maybe a facial or something. I don't know what is available and what isn't, but think about what people like experiences or what they would appreciate, and what can you do from that? Maybe a manicure or pedicure for a woman or a friend. And I know that obviously there are some elements of damage to the environment through those things, but it's still not yet another thing, but it can be an experience you can have with that person. So you're building memories instead of just buying items. Okay, so any more from you?
I like that a lot. On the running theme, over here anyway, like there are various kind of running technique experts, for example.
That's a good
so
one.
many runners I know don't they pay £150 for shoes, but they wouldn't necessarily go to an expert to learn how to run with good technique. And I happen to have a good friend, Shane Benzie, who does this, full time as a living. So and definitely people do buy that as a gift for people. Here's an afternoon with this running technique expert.
That's good.
But there are other sort of skills workshops as well, like or weekends away, which I think seem to go down well. So it's and then the person is having their skills furthered, got something to look forward to. And I like the idea also of Christmas. It's not the present hasn't already been gone and on Christmas Day, like it's something to look forward to still afterwards. I think experience is a great one. But also, I suppose if you want to buy, like, good old fashioned books are still a great a great thing, aren't they? And we could sneakily. We don't want to be too irritating, maybe. But you could be buying people the book and similar books that you suggested. Although that some people aren't.
I don't know if most people would want it because they enjoy it. But I would recommend that book. But maybe, I don't know if that would be one someone would open up and be like, oh, thank you, this is what I've wanted all year long. But that said, there are some books that I feel like Emmanuel Acho has a book. I actually can't remember what it's called. Maybe it is just called Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. I want that book. So that will be something that's on my list for Christmas. It could be something about environmental justice, but think carefully about what that person would actually want. And then along those lines, you could do something else. Like you could say to people, if you have everything you need, you could say, look, I really don't need anything. I know you love to buy and I appreciate that. But could you do a donation to a sustainable NPO or a charity like the Solutions Project, Protect Our Winters and Sunrise Movement are three that come to mind here in the US. I'm sure you have some suggestions in the UK. You mentioned Trees Not Teas. I don't know if they take donations or anything like that, but maybe we can get some places in the show notes for suggestions. But what other ones do you have for people?
Well, that's the perfect one, because they've just, as I say, they're a pretty new company, but just for Christmas, they're just about to launch a kind of buy a tree for Christmas. And actually, I do remember my sister doing this years ago. Actually, she was getting bought sort of for her birthday. She wanted like a square of the Amazon rainforest. I can't remember who with. Maybe I'll get in touch with her and see if she can still do that.
Yeah.
But and then it was protected apparently. And this was decades ago actually. But yeah, Trees Not Teas. You can buy someone a tree. But while we were talking about books, I had a sneaky idea actually, which was like, I don't want to upset too many meat eaters, and I still occasionally have meat, but you could buy like a vegetarian cookbook or a plant-based cookbook for someone who just to get them a little bit curious, maybe about eating a bit less meat.
Yeah, you don't have to be a vegan, but you could cut down.
No.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest problem with a lot of people, that I think now, I mean, there are still some like, don't you dare take my meat, but I think most people, it's like, so what am I supposed to eat? Like beans and rice for me for dinner every day. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. Definitely.
And I think it would be surprised. We've been, I suppose, experimenting that way for most of the year, and we've been very pleasantly surprised. We especially thought our kids wouldn't give up sausages, but actually the amount of meals we can kind of sneak past them when they don't even realize it's not meat, and the amount of things they say they don't like, and then we've managed to make a meal where it's in there, usually quite subtly. Has gone down well. That's another option, I think. It might even be like, I don't know what the situation with plastic bags is over there, but it might be buying someone a good bag, a good little backpack, so that when they go to the corner shop, they don't pick up a plastic bag, or they don't need one because they've got a decent bag to take out with them. I suppose there are little things like that.
Yeah, there's also over here you can get produce bags like to put your. I mean, they're only just allowed to be used again here. I actually just used them for the first time last week. We're here in St. Louis, but I know it depends on where you are in America for that. And I don't know about the UK as well, but you can get like bags to put your apples and pears and stuff in. Although England is way worse than America with packaging everything in the fruit section. So I don't know if that would be worth it in England, but here in America, a lot of things are loose. And so that's another good thing that you could get for people. Then they're not picking up those nasty plastic bags every time you're going to buy fruits and vegetables. Although, again, in England, I'm not sure what the option is, because I mean, avocados are packaged over there, which drives me crazy. And bananas are in packages as well. So, oh God.
We've been experimenting with different supermarkets, and Able and Coles we've just started using. They use hardly any plastic packaging, but they are a minority. But I feel like some of the other supermarkets are sort of waking up to it.
Well, hopefully by the time I get back there, it's all changed.
Yes, we'll do our best. Yeah, try and get it ready for you.
And then one other thing I want to add, just if you have anything else, two more things, I guess. A silicone baking sheet for putting your fruits and vegetables on rather than using foil. You can get them. I know I got mine from IKEA. It was $5, probably £5 as well, to put your whatever you're cooking in the oven, so you don't need to use foil. That's the one. And then beeswax wraps are also really good for wrapping up things. You can reuse them. You just wipe them off afterwards, rinse them in cold water, and you can use them again and again and again, rather than cling film or saran wrap, as you say over here. So that's another option. Anything else?
Well, they're great. I hadn't heard of the silicone option, actually. That's really good. But definitely the beeswax wraps we've been using, which are surprisingly good. I don't know if... do you have milk delivery people over there?
We get it. I know I have it, but I don't know how widespread it is in America. Because I know we can get it.
Yeah, we cut down on a lot of plastic simply by not buying milk from the supermarkets, but buying it from a local milk delivery, and it all comes in glass. I don't know what options you have over there, but that cut down our plastic massively, actually.
Yeah, for sure. We have that same option. So I would say, and I've had that in both the two places I've lived, which have been here in St. Louis a bit more expected, but I lived in Kentucky before this, so if Kentucky has glass bottles, then I would imagine most places would. So, So I think actually, Damian, if it's okay with you, I will make sure that we have put together between us some kind of guide. So for those listeners, go to the show notes. And even if I haven't asked Damian here, so if he doesn't want to, then I'll put it together. But I'll put some kind of guide in the show notes for people to have these ideas written down. So you can find those in the show notes and go check out the ideas there. So anything else?
Yeah. I'll have a dig around and get some more options. But I love just the idea of doing this is just thinking freshly about Christmas, because it is a time where almost all of us overconsume, and it's better to overconsume maybe on the food and drink rather than sort of stuff that will take years to biodegrade.
Yes.
Yeah. So get fat instead. Yeah.
Hey, we don't want to be using terms fat, but you can enjoy yourself extra over the holiday season. That's what I will say.
Okay. Yes.
All right, Damian, thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom, for letting us get to know you a bit more. There will be lots of links in the show notes to get to know you. Anywhere else you would like to send people to go find you?
I quite enjoy Instagram. That's quite good fun. If people want to look me up there, I think it's ultra_Damo because my name was already taken, but I'm probably quite easy to find, and Strava and so on. But do get in touch.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. And best of luck with any other FKTs you have coming.
Hey, thank you.
Before we end this episode, I just want to take a moment to shout out my podcast editor, Jeremy Nessel, who has done such a wonderful job of looking after my podcast, taking out all the mishaps in the episodes, while still keeping in the vulnerability and the realness and the rawness of the conversation. This is not one of those podcasts where I take out the ums and the ers and the sometimes the delay in words, because I think it's very important to keep that authenticity. We're surrounded by perfected and manicured everything, and I think it's really important that Running for Real stays that way. So thank you to Jeremy for your work. I also want to thank Maria Vargas and Amber Moore, who are also part of my team. They've been a big part of this community and me being able to build this brand. So just want to give them a shout out too. All right, let's get right back to the end of this episode. Thank you to Damian for joining me on the show today. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Yes, another one focused on climate emergency, but I'm not going to stop with these ones. As you can tell, this is something I'm very passionate about, and Damian has a whole different outlook on it. He also had some great ideas, and as I mentioned at the beginning, he has actually been really helpful for giving me a suggestions for my giving guide this year. So you can go check that out by getting a link in the show notes or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Or your favorite podcast player, I should say. I want to take a moment to thank MetPro. You can get 14 days free of their platform by going to metpro.co/Tina. That's metpro.co/Tina to get your 14 days free of their on their app. And also to Inside Tracker. I want to thank Inside Tracker for giving $200 off their ultimate package at this time of year for their best deal of the year. And you can get that by going to insidetracker.com. That's insidetracker.com. And you can use code GIFT from Run for Real. That's GIFT from Run for Real to get $200 off. It is extended another week. So that's another big plus that we get to enjoy this. And yeah, I have been using Inside Trackers for years, and I appreciate them so much for keeping on top of how my body is doing. So be sure to go check it out at insidetracker.com and use code GIFT from Run for Real. You can find links to everything we've talked about today in the show notes, including our Black-owned business of the week, by going to tinamuir.com/episode 224. tinamuir.com/episode 224. And my friends, I think that is about it. I will see you next week, and thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Running for Real podcast. Be sure to check out tinamuir.com for show notes and even more helpful running information.